for people's schedules. So we're trying to work with folks and to provide, content that you're asking for. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our little intro spiel, and then I'll pass over to Shanae. I'm so excited for today's talk. I think this is definitely something that's needed in the community, and I'm so excited that, Shanae is the one to give it. I've been watching her for a while, and she comes with the fire. So, okay. So go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your location, your career focus. If you're feeling funky, include your LinkedIn profile. And something new that we're trying to include is go ahead and post if you're hiring, looking, a mentor or a mentee. And the purposes of this is, we know it's sometimes hard to communicate, it's sometimes hard to connect in this new, COVID world, but let's try to keep that connections going as much as possible. So if you are under any of these, please feel free to just say hello in general. We do want to communicate, we do want our members to constantly communicate and be connected with each other. We're all one big UX family here. Okay, you can join our Slack channel. I'll leave this up for a couple seconds, so if anyone wants to take a screenshot. We are very active on Slack and STLX. We have channels specifically if you're looking for stuff about leadership topics, if you're looking for stuff about how to make it into the field as a newbie, if you're looking for portfolio reviews. We really are a community here with STLX. You can also follow us on Meetup. We do post all of our things to Meetup. So whenever we have an event, that is the place where you're guaranteed to find it. We're now making LinkedIn and Eventbrite meetups as well, but just something usually, regardless, 100%, it's always gonna be a Meetup. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Our talk from today will be going on YouTube. So if you don't want to be seen, feel free to ask your questions in the chat and I will get to them for Shanae, because we will have a coffee chat after our actual talk. One thing that I do want to let everyone know is we do have a meeting coming up next Friday, the 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. And it is a networking event. And so the reason why I'm so excited about this, I'm an introvert. I'm not really networking. But I'm excited because of the fact of creating community with fellow UX people. So that event there, we'll have an introduction to networking from the fabulous Tim Hikes. I know that, some of us, like myself, have forgotten how to network because it's been so long. So he's going to teach us and let us know how to do that. And then we are going to have rooms based around what our members have said they needed. So just general UX chat and some mentor mentee rooms. So if you're looking for a mentor or if you're looking to mentee somebody, we'll have a room for that. And we'll also have as well a hiring room. So we'll have some recruiters there. And if you are looking to be hired or you're looking to hire, there will be a room for that. And if you're looking to hire, please let me know. You reach out to Holly or I, and we can give you a little plug. Okay, so this is our team. Me and Holly. We got Martha Valenta, who is our co-founder, and then our social media manager, who many people don't see all the time, but is very, very important to everything we do, Danielle Patton. Okay. So I am so excited to introduce Shanae. So Shanae Chapman is passionate about product strategy, collaboration, and empowerment when designing technical products and systems. She has over 13 years of experience designing products and services. Shanae is an active professional speaker in the community and shares knowledge about UX careers, designing secure cloud apps, entrepreneurship, and increasing diversity in tech. You can find her Twitter here and her LinkedIn here. Just a few things additional I want to say about Shanae. I've gotten to see Shanae present before at our conference. I've gotten to see her teach a little bit, and she really walks that UX life. Like, she really knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about. She's also done things such as for Launch Code, looked over their portfolios and helping their students and doing mock interviews with them. So not only is she about the life, but she's teaching the life as well. And I think that that's very important, and I love that about her. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over to her. And so we will have a presentation from her about anti-racism and design. And then we'll go into a coffee chat after, where we'll have a little bit of discussion time.
All right, thank you, Al, for having me. So Al reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to present? And I said, for STLX, definitely. I will definitely make the time, definitely want this to happen. I'm very happy to be here, very happy to support St. Louis UX researchers and designers. And just thank you for taking some time out of your day to join me. And I am going to start sharing my screen. Oh, I need share access.
Give me 1 second. This is my first time running Zoom, so they kind of let me get into a little bit of trouble. So,
All right, girl, get in some trouble, some good
go
trouble.
ahead and try now.
Okay, let's see. All right, I got it. I got the power. So I'm pretty informal when I present. I think it's also about having a conversation and having the ability to share our experiences. So please ask questions in the chat and we will get to it at the end of the presentation. And today I'm going to share with you a talk on designing anti-racism. All right, can you all see the screen okay?
You can see you.
All right, good. So just a little bit more about me. I'm a senior UX designer at SmartBear, which is a software company based in the Boston area. The products that I focus on are in the API lifecycle. So people who are designing APIs, authoring APIs, collaborating between QAs and engineering on APIs, and also the consumers of APIs. So the folks who are using those APIs within their enterprise companies and building integrations and endpoints to make sure that they're able to be productive and get things done efficiently. A lot of my work now is working on building out the UX research program at SmartBear. So doing structured external testing with our customers and people who trial our software and making sure that we are exceeding customer expectations, that we are collecting feedback on what's working well, what needs to be improved, and building that into objectives for product direction and moving forward to increase conversion and revenue for the company. I'm also a consultant, so I have a side hustle called Nerdy Diva, and that space is more for the creatives and the startups, and do work in the St. Louis community with the St. Louis Regional Chamber, and also with WashU Scandalaris Entrepreneurship Center. So work with some of the folks who are in that center and provide advice and resources and also hire them into the team. And we work on projects that are for the people who are building those creative apps on the side and building out their new ideas and exploring their dreams as well. And lastly, I am an adjunct professor. I teach at Lesley University remotely. Lesley is based in the Boston area, a little north of Boston in Cambridge. And the course that I teach is UX research methods. So teaching students 8 weeks, everything from personas to journey maps to usability testing and interviews, and how do you bring that all together and make sense of it and report that out and share that information with your colleagues and product management and engineering as well. So you can follow me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter and on Instagram. And I regularly post some of the videos that I share with my students there as well. So today I'm going to walk you through applying design thinking principles to anti-racism and creating change and supporting equity. So, and this is in terms of how do we build more inclusive workplaces and environments for the people who work within our teams, and also how do we build more inclusive products and services. And going to use something that will probably sound very familiar to you, some of that agile process of discovery and design and creating an MVP and using a backlog. And to get us started, I just want to set the mood and share some quotes that really speaks to me about this anti-racism work. And this is a quote from St. Louis' own Antoinette Carroll, founder of the Creative Reaction Lab, who says, like all systems, systems of oppression, inequality, and inequity are by design, and therefore they too can be redesigned. So that gives me a lot of hope and a lot of passion and a lot of empowerment that we as people who are allies, people who care about creating opportunities for everyone, no matter their skin color. We can also create ways to build systems and build workplaces and build products that include options and opportunities for all people.
I'm just gonna give two snaps and a clap for Antoinette and the possibility
Yes,
of redesigning systems.
yes,
I love it.
amen. Let's do that. Yeah, she's doing some great work. Also, a book that I highly recommend is Ibrahim Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. And one of his quotes in the book that really drives the point home of anti-racism is, once you understand what a racist idea and a racist policy is, you begin to realize there's a fundamental contrast to that. And that contrast is not some sort of neutrality. So the idea here is that if you are not in agreement with racism, then you have to say something, you have to do something. So not doing something is silence, and that silence is being in compliance to those racist ideas and systems as well. So one, we're going to look at some case studies from tech around how we see some of the racist ideas and technology, and what are some terminology from the diversity, equity, inclusion space that refers to some of the things that we have seen thus far. One of the case studies that has come up in the past has been the Google algorithm for different types of search terms. One of the thought leaders in this field is Jamila Smith-Loud from Google, who had a great presentation on how do we teach computers to find and categorize information, and that there's human biases in that data collection process, and that includes representative harm and allocative harm. In this example on the right, so if someone typed in doctor maybe 5 years ago, they would see just only white male doctors. And we know for a fact that that's not an accurate description of doctors, the field of being a physician, that there's doctors of many different ethnicities and genders and backgrounds. But what we're getting back from the system is a very homogeneous description, which is not accurate, and which produces representative harm. And just to get in a little deeper with that, the terms allocative harm, one is when a system allocates or withholds a certain opportunity or resource. And then representative harm means when a system reinforces the subordination of some groups along the lines of identity. So on the right is another example where autofill. So someone's typing in Jews should, and the autofill that populates is referring to a lot of derogatory and anti-Semitic text that's being spewed back to them. So this reinforces some of those ideas around superiority and inferiority, and what people have placed into the system, the data that was entered into the system and allowed to stay in the system, which is now being used to autofill in this case. So thinking about, like, when we build systems, are there potential ways that the system could produce allocative harm, or are there potential ways that the system could produce representative harm, is something to consider. Another one is the market demographics. So sometimes, as researchers, representative harm can exist by not including diverse sampling for usability testing, ethnographic studies, interviews, et cetera. And sometimes that comes out of just negligence and not being intentional, and making sure that we have people of different genders, that we have people of different ethnicities, that we have people of different countries within our sampling pool. And there is value in having those diverse representatives in these field studies, primarily because we have more than one type of customer. We have customers that span the globe. We have customers that come from a diverse market, and understanding their needs is going to help make the product better as well. And there have been other, situations where people say, oh, well, we don't have many users from, underrepresented backgrounds. Like maybe we don't have many Black users, which like, do you have data on that? Or those assumptions that you have? So maybe finding out some of that data is important as well. Capturing that data of your users, of your usage, if they're willing to share their information with you. And those diverse perspectives may also alert you to something that you otherwise may have missed, and can find different outcomes that can help the system as a whole. So two, we're going to talk about how do we actually do this? How do we design anti-racism? And one tip that I have for organizations is consider hiring experts to consult or to be within your organization as a diversity, equity, inclusion expert that sits outside of human resources, because human resources and DEI work is not the same. And having that person work within your organization and work within your teams on understanding your current state. So what is your current state for your workplace culture? How is your current company and your workplace creating products and services? And is there any intentionality on having an anti-racism lens? So tracking, where are we today, as you would with a product? Like, what's the current state of your product? What's the current state of your workplace and the products and services that you create from that anti-racism lens? Where are some areas where you could improve? What are some areas where you are doing well and you're getting, good responses? Taking some time to do some surveys and some analysis from your own employees and from your own customers on what's working well and what could be better in that anti-racism lens. And this is something that I do work with companies on as well. So if you're interested in this, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk more about this as well. And again, so some of those questions that you could ask in interviews or surveys would be around priorities of the people of color in your organization. Do you have employee resource groups? Do you have safe spaces for the people of color in your organization? Where are their honest thoughts on how you're doing with diversity and anti-racism? What efforts are currently in progress? Often there's also people of color in the organization who are in professional organizations like National Society of Black Engineers or the Hispanic Society of Engineers. And they often go to these groups because they're looking for people who understand what they're going through as a person of color in a technical space. Although we're designers, they still have some overlap with engineers as well. So are there ways that you can find the designers who are in different professional organizations and bring some of that integration on some of the programs that they have? So if they have recruiting programs, if they have webinars with experts, are there ways to unite some of the efforts that you have with your organization with some of those organizations' work that's already in progress? And think about how would you evaluate if you're effective? What does your organization, the people of color in your organization think about what should be done and what they would like to see, and how would they determine if you're being effective or not? Giving some of that feedback is really important in making a difference for the workplace as well. And this all stems into some actionable low-hanging fruit. So thinking about ways to build in MVP, short experiments to see how we can increase anti-racism in our workplaces and then in our products and services. The thing is, just begin, just start somewhere, start small, build up, and get feedback along the way. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the idea is making a move and moving that needle. So for anti-racism in the workplace, on an individual level, when you hear something, you see something that you notice it's a microaggression, and for folks who don't know that term microaggression, definitely encourage you to do some research on that topic. But essentially at a high level, microaggressions are subtle or slights that create unwelcoming spaces for people of color and for women as well, that reinforce stereotypes and that reinforce, some of the feelings that you are different, that you are other, that you don't belong, that you're unintelligent, that you're not capable. So cutting someone off where they're speaking is a microaggression. Not listening to someone and then not responding to what they say, but then when someone else says the exact same thing, responding to what that person said is a microaggression. So think about like the behaviors that you see around you. And when something happens, speak out about it and show companionship and allyship for the people who are experiencing those microaggressions. And ways that you can do that is in the example of someone cutting off someone else in a meeting while they're talking and still stating their thoughts, asking for space for that person. Say, hey, we didn't hear what Jason had to say, or we didn't hear what Keisha had to say. Can we go back to that topic to make sure that they have that space to share their thoughts as well? And that includes that inclusiveness and that that sense of belonging and welcoming and being part of the team as well. Also, consider creating a book club or creating a space where you share information and increase cultural competency in your workplace. So one of the books that I recommended, How to Be an Anti-Racist, could be a good place to start. I also have a book list. I gave a workshop on this topic for Interaction Design Association earlier this year, and would be happy to share the book list with y'all also. So consider reading some books and having some discussion cross-culturally with your employees, with your design team about some of these experiences, and taking some time to reflect and have some of your ideas questioned, and being vulnerable and sharing your experiences and hearing and listening from diverse people and their experiences as well. And something that you can do also is to think of how can we make sure that we include diverse authors in our company resources and subscriptions. So many of us have subscriptions to O'Reilly or LinkedIn Learning and Safari, but how can we make sure that when we present that information and we share resources with our teams, that we're including not only people who are represented often, but some of those underrepresented people as well. And something to consider for hiring. So thinking about holistic resume reviews and thinking about capturing, some of the experiences of people who may not have had opportunities to work at fancy companies or go to the top schools in the country, but consider drive and consider ambition and consider how people have been able to do design work in creative ways. Like for myself, I became a freelancer very early in my career, freelance when I was in college, and that was design experience that helped me get full-time design jobs later on. So taking in how people are practicing their craft, although it may not be at a fancy agency or it may not be at a large institution, understanding that people can be driven and create opportunities for themselves in different ways, and being open to that as well. And collecting their feedback. So understanding that as people leave your organization, what type of words of wisdom or what type of perspectives do they have on diversity and inclusion in your organization, and think about adding that to some of those exit interviews as well. And lastly, we want to talk about creating backlog. So anti-racism backlog. And these could be more of the bigger ideas that take a little bit more time and organization to finesse and to create were definitely valuable, definitely worth the time and worth the effort, and definitely could be more long-term solutions. So considering formal programs for anti-racism and supporting the careers of people of color in your organization by building diversity councils, having a diversity conference, and having leadership programs that focus on people of color in your organization, and giving them the opportunities to form relationships with sponsors and helping them with some of the things that are not often taught in the workplace, like negotiation, like understanding how to have relationships with senior stakeholders, and how to be effective in sales and persuasion as someone who's working with business representatives as a designer as well. Another thing to consider is performance reviews, and definitely have started to see some companies take this into consideration, like VMware. They now evaluate their leaders on their ability to also work effectively with diverse groups and diverse hiring, and use that as part of their performance review process. So this is something to consider. It's really, taking the opportunities, especially for leaders and organizations, to not only say we care about anti-racism, but to make it tied to your reviews as a leader and as a manager. Or are you really doing the work of anti-racism in the workplace? And recruiting. So again, going to professional organizations that focus on supporting people of color, going to that networking events. If you're waiting for an invite, I'm giving you the invite. You can go, you can show up, and you can have that opportunity to network with diverse candidates, have that opportunity to build relationships, have that opportunity to share your resources, share your knowledge, and share your job openings as well. And as we know, employee referrals are crucial. They're very crucial, especially in user experience, where we are a small, tight-knit community, and some of those positions are not always listed online, but it's based on who you know and who's in your circle. So expanding your circle and getting to know folks who are outside of your usual day-to-day. And I do have a list of some of these organizations. You can find it on my website on nerdydiva.com, and also feel free to email me and I will send you the link as well. On the right is an example of this diverse interchange, intersectional networking. Had the opportunity to speak at a joint event hosted by UXPA Boston and NSBE Boston. So NSBE is the National Society of Black Engineers, and there is a St. Louis chapter. There's a NSBE St. Louis chapter, or there are ways that NSBE St. Louis and the STLX meetup can partner and do some diverse networking. So these are things to consider and to bring into the space as well. So thank you so much for your time. That's all I have today, and would love to take your questions and chat with you more.
Thank you so much, Shanae. That was great. So now we're going to open up to questions. We are going to end around 12:30. So we got about 30 minutes, five more or less, somewhere in there, but we're going to open it up now to chats. So you either can post in the chat line or you can ask. And if there are no questions, I have a couple to start. So does anyone want to kick us off?
I can kick us off.
Sweet.
Hey, Shanae, that was a great presentation. My name's Jerome. I'm a recruiter with Tech Systems, and I really related to some of those examples. I remember doing a Google image search on my name, and nothing came up but mugshots, and I was like, "Oh, that's helpful with job searching."
Oh man.
So, yeah. Fortunately, it's not that way.
Biases. Yes.
Yeah. So my question to you is twofold. One, where have you seen the most progress in this topic in terms of diversity and design? And what do you think is the next biggest challenge or the most pressing challenge?
Yeah, it's tough. I think there's definitely to take your second question first. There's definitely still a huge barrier between design leadership and diversity. So having leaders who are from underrepresented groups is something that we don't often see in the design field. And I think that's something that we need to start asking some questions about. Why don't we see that? And it's not just a pipeline problem. Is, are we allowing people to have those opportunities to lead and giving them those opportunities and seeing if they can perform? And sometimes, especially for their first management job, you have to put some faith in people and give them the opportunity to see how they perform. And that's for anyone. Are we creating those same opportunities for people who are underrepresented? Those are some of the questions to ask. And then to go back to your first question, who's doing well? I think everybody can improve. I think everybody has something to work on. But the companies that I follow who are making huge efforts, one is VMware. They have published a Black Lives Matter design handbook. So if you follow them on Twitter, or if you follow me at Nerdy Diva Design on Twitter, I retweeted what they posted as well. I think Adobe is doing some good work and highlighting Black and Brown voices who are in the creative field and giving them opportunities to speak at their conferences and bringing them into the organization as well and promoting them in leadership also. Who else? I think IBM does some good work as well. So again, with having people brought into the organization. So with the hiring, with the promoting people from underrepresented backgrounds, and then also having the training, giving people training opportunities and giving them opportunities to share their expertise across their companies, but also across the industry. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? So Shanae, I got one for you. How do you get honest with your company about D&I issues? So for instance, I'll give an example. If you're seeing that your company isn't having a diverse research pool, how would you bring that to them to kind of let them know without, I guess, stirring the water too much to cause backlash? So I feel that sometimes that's the feedback that I hear from people, is not that they don't want to say anything, but they think they don't have the power to say things.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's one, having a conversation and asking questions. So asking questions of leaders as to what are some of the efforts in distributing these openings to diverse organizations and diverse people. Like, what are we doing to be intentional about that? And then secondly, being empowered, and like, if you're at a company and there's openings, sharing that within your network and with professional organizations that are supporting people of color. So we are hiring at Smart Bear. We're hiring for remote roles, and I share that. I share that within National Society of Black Engineers. I share that with STLX. I share that with UX Her, is a community of Black women who are interested in user experience. So I share that in the spaces where I know those people gather, and that's something that anyone can do and not just leaders.
Great. And then I see November has a question. November, you're muted.
Would help.
Your hair looks
Unmute.
lovely, by
Yes.
the way.
Thank you. So you answered part of what I was going to ask with the very tail end of that last answer. But what are some other things that we can do when we're not in a leadership position to help promote the cause?
Yeah. So definitely sharing within your network, communication channels. So for instance, my company uses Slack for communications, and we have a diversity, inclusion, Slack channel. So sharing information in that channel. I share events and programs from professional organizations that support people of color. I share that there. I share volunteer opportunities, because there are people who want to be engaged, but they may not know how to. And as an individual, you can share those opportunities. You can share with your network. You can contact your people team and ask about employee resource groups and community and culture, and what are some of the efforts that they have coming up on creating more diverse and inclusive conversations and partnerships. And corporate partnerships is another good way. Asking how can we sponsor and contribute to some of these organizations could be another thing that you as an individual have every right to ask about that.
Thanks.
Can you speak on, once you actually get those diverse teams and groups and stuff, how do you keep them? Because I think that's the thing, is you'll get these folks into companies and things, but the environment isn't conducive for them to actually succeed. So what are some sort of practices and things that we can all put into play to kind of make diverse teams safe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it definitely has to be a top-down and bottom-up approach. So from the executive leaders, they have to be involved. Like, they should be sponsors of your diversity efforts and of your employee resource groups. You should have someone from the executive team who is taking the time and mentoring and sharing resources. And even if it's once a year or twice a year, but they're making their presence known and they're communicating and sharing information and, sharing the resources that can help people be successful and building spaces for them to have community. So creating cadence for having that community. Do we meet weekly? Do we meet once a month? And, having that space and creating that space and having distribution of different roles so that people aren't burdened by doing everything themselves, having a way to allow people to give and contribute and have support, and keeping those employee resource groups alive and running, and just building a culture of transparency. Like, it's okay to share about how you feel after seeing another case of a Black person being killed by police. It's like, we should be able to have spaces where we can talk about that. And like, if that's on my mind as a individual, as a someone who's working at a company, when we have our team meetings and we're discussing what's going on that week, being able to have that safe space and say, hey, like, I'm really in a raw place today. I am raw, and this is where I'm at, and, making space to listen to when people talk, and, creating the environments that you would want to be in as well. And that has to be intentional.
I totally agree with that. I worked at a different company for Mike Brown than I did for George Floyd, and it was a completely different experience. I know for Mike Brown, I was almost scared to go into work because I knew just kind of what my environment was. And I didn't want to deal with any sort of backlash or questioning like what I thought about it as a Black person, because I wasn't ready to speak. Whereas with the George Floyd, it was definitely different in the sense that it was actually acknowledged at the company I was at, and it was kind of spoke on that, we are hurting right now. Because I think that's something that people don't realize, is when you see someone looks like you in the news that's being killed, you are hurting. It feels like someone you're connected to, and you still have to show up to work. You still have to do your job. You still have to keep going. And sometimes that is a soft spot. So I think that's a great to call that out. Or even I would say when microaggressions happen in front of you and you see those sort of things, that's another situation for me that I feel responsible, just feeling in community with my fellow minorities. I feel responsible to speak up and say something.
Yeah, and then surveys is another great way to go. Like, we often do employee surveys, but you could consider, and this is something they do at Lesley University, they have a diversity specific survey for staff and students, for staff and students. And that's something that can be considered for workplaces as well. So having a diversity centric survey on, like, how are things? What can we do to improve? How can we support you? And getting some feedback that way as well.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So I appreciate what you both were saying, because it sounds like, I mean, such a big part of having an anti-racist workplace or an inclusive workplace at all is having people feel like they can show up as their full selves.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I sometimes feel in tension with as a researcher, like I'm a design researcher, is that as a researcher, I'm expected to have a professional sheen and like some level of neutrality. And like, that's what's communicated to me as like what my role should be as a design researcher when I'm working on topics that aren't neutral. And like and like I'm talking with people who are having huge experiences happen in their lives and are affecting them. And those things might be based on their identity. They could be based on some other like system of injustice. So I guess I'm curious to hear a little bit about how you think about, showing up as your whole self in the design process, and also like taking care of both yourself and also the people that you interact with, just within our design work.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question there. So are you asking about if you were doing research on anti-racism, how do you stay, what position should you have as the researcher?
I think in any research context, like if we're trying to help people show up as their full selves and also enable ourselves to show up as our full selves, like how do we think about doing that in the context of the research we do? I can give you an example. Like I just worked on a project that was about adult education,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked with a really diverse, like our user pool was really, really diverse. And we interacted with a lot of people who had really like horrible experiences, racist experiences, sexist experience, ageist experiences, and trying to like make space for them in the research session to like process and talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
and feel heard by
Yeah.
mostly white women listening to them.
Yeah.
But also to like recognize like I was angry, like I got angry at people during this, and so it was hard to like hold a sort of professional sheen when I was like, I'm so angry because of this thing you're telling me.
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence definitely plays a huge role as a researcher as well. So for topics like this, and there definitely may be people who think differently than I, but I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, I'm sorry you experienced that. I'm sorry that happened. And you continue to build rapport with the person who's giving you that gift of feedback and giving you the gift of their story. So continuing to build that relationship between researcher and participant, I think it's perfectly fine to say, wow, that sounds frustrating. Wow, and being honest, like, wow, I'm feeling angry based on what you said, and that can be a way to build connection. And that person actually may feel safer with you and be more willing to share more accurately and more authentically. So I don't think that you necessarily have to be completely neutral. And in fact, it can be detrimental if you're just by the book and not showing any emotion when someone has something raw and traumatic that has happened to them. Good question.
Hi guys, I'm Jazz. I am from China. I accidentally moved to St. Louis last year prior to
Well,
COVID.
welcome. We're glad you're here. Yeah.
I am also very glad that, I came and, it was just coincidental that I got stuck. But anyways, I just got accepted by WashU's MBA program this morning.
Oh,
and
congratulations.
we're excited about that. Yeah, I really, really I totally understand what you're talking about. I wouldn't say that, I've experienced what you have experienced because, I grew up in China.
Sure.
But the microaggression the logic is not only limited to, say, minorities in the United States, like, it's also to women in workspaces.
And it's global. Yes,
I've had, Chinese male bosses telling me sexual jokes in the workspace, not even after work. So there's that. It's even if it's in Shanghai, it's still kind of like the Wild West to a certain degree. Now, I I used to be a teacher. I used to have my own small company in Shanghai, and I do teach the students. They're, teenagers, and I teach them about corporate social responsibilities. And I do agree with you that these companies need to do something like the what's that auto feeling when you search for something on Google, and the pictures you can find when you search for a specific profession, that would mislead the researchers or whoever's doing research there. And I've seen most recently that there have been some campaigns about equity, about including minorities in the US, and LGBTQ community, and I've seen cosmetic products companies launching campaigns to design cosmetic products to accentuate the skin tones of minorities in the United States, rather than just appealing to the majority white population. And sorry, I'm a little blunt. I'm the foreigner here. I don't mean any offense.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what your question is, though.
So my question is, sorry for the long story. So my question is, which brand, which company do you think have done the most or the best in terms of being equitable? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. As I mentioned earlier, I think every company still has a lot of work to do. Honestly, they all need a little bit more work, and it's intentional. Like, it has to be done on a continuous basis. It's not a checklist where we do these 5 things and we done, now we good. So that's not how it is. It has to be a continuous practice. It has to be embedded in the culture as this is something that we believe. These are our core values, include diversity and inclusion. And companies who are saying that and also doing the work, or some of the companies that I mentioned previously, like Adobe, they are making sure that they are including Black and brown and diverse voices in their work that they publish, in their marketing campaigns, and their company as well, with their hiring, with their leadership programs. So they're doing that work. Professional organizations that are doing that work. UXPA is doing a great job of including more diverse voices and having diversity and inclusion roundtables and webinars as well. Like, they're not only saying they care, but they're allowing people of color to bless them and share their experience and expertise with them as well. So look for the people who, when you search hashtags, you search diversity, you search hashtag anti-racism, you search those type of tags that indicate diversity and inclusion and anti-racism. Follow the people who are posting, and who are creating events and who are creating opportunities and leadership programs and training programs for the people of color in their organizations, and the white people in the organizations as well, to learn more about diversity and inclusion. So yeah, those are my suggestions.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Great. Do we have any other questions or any notes people want to bring up?
I'm so happy that you all made time today. I'm just happy to see all your faces and see all your photos. So just thank you for being here. Look, we all got lives. We all got a lot going on. So I really appreciate you joining today and being in the comments and sharing your questions. Really appreciate you all today.
So I kind of got a hardball question for you, Shanae.
All right, bring it.
So I know you talked about putting how well folks work with diversity and performance reviews. Now, when you do that, you're gonna have people that come back and say that they're subjective and that there's no way you can measure that, and that's not. And I would push it past not only minority, but folks with accessibility needs, and just in general, how are you responding to diverse teams? I think is something that needs to be included in performance reviews. But how do you deal with those people who say that that's subjective and not something that's measurable or something that can be concrete formed?
That's a very good question. So one, you can measure it. You can ask, people ask for race when they do applications, when they submit applications. They often ask for race. People can choose to opt out. If they choose to opt out, that's fine. But most people don't. you know, most people will choose a race. So that's one way you can get an indicator of who are you actually bringing into the organization, who are you hiring, who are you promoting. And then secondly, I listened to Ursula Burns, who was the previous Black woman, who was the previous CEO of the Xerox company. And she gave a talk at the virtually at the California Conference for Women. And she said earlier in her career, she was against quotas. Like she didn't want anyone to think that she got to where she was based on a quota or affirmative action. And she says now the position she has as a leader is quotas are punishment for businesses and organizations who are not doing the right thing. They are not bringing in women and people of color. So that's why the quotas are there, so that there can be opportunities for equality. Because people are not doing it, then you have to step in and make sure that's being done. And that's the reason for it.
Perfect. I love hearing you say that. And I think especially when we talk about those sort of things, that it is so important when we're going to have diverse teams to keep them happy and to make lanes for people to kind of speak up if they're not happy or there are things that are going on. And again, not just with diversity, but with accessibility as well. So.
Yeah, I also want to add, my previous employer was Boeing out in Hazelwood, and they have created a strong employee resource group for people of color, LGBT, veterans. So they have these strong groups, and in response to the lack of diversity in leadership, they are releasing their diversity numbers of their business for the first time. So that's a step, releasing your diversity numbers of your organization. When I'm job searching, I love to see companies who list on the website what their diversity and gender numbers are, because that tells me you care about this, you're keeping track of this, and you want to improve this. And secondly, having metrics, having goals for increasing diversity. So Boeing has a goal of increasing Black leadership by 20%. So that is a concrete goal. I think they have a time frame. I think by 2025 is the time frame. But you can go to their website and go to the diversity and inclusion page and see the statistics. So that is another way that you can hold your organizations accountable. Say, what type of metrics are we putting in place? Can we share our diversity metrics with the public as well?
Perfect. Okay, Shanae, I'm going to thank you, and I'm going to close it out and share my screen real quick. Thank you, Shanae, so much. This was so great. And I know that this was different from our normal type of meeting, but I think that it is definitely needed. And I love that we could do it in this sort of coffee chat format and get some back and forth discussion. So again, upcoming events, we have our virtual networking night. It's free. And I know some of us have forgotten how to network. We've been in a whole pandemic. I understand. So Tim Hikes actually will be giving us a short introduction on networking, and then we'll break out into our networking rooms. We will have general chat rooms, and we'll also have rooms for mentors and mentees. So if you're looking for a mentor, you're looking at a mentee, we have a room for that. We also have a room as well for if you are looking for a job. As I stated earlier, we want everyone to get paid. That's the goal. So we do have recruiters coming. Jerome is here today, and he will also be one of the recruiters from Texas as well. They're a great company. Get into them. So we will be having that sort of room as well. If you are looking for a job, please come. We want to get you paid. Okay. All right. We also have memberships. Most of our events for STLX are free, and the way that we can do that is by our memberships. You know, it costs for Zoom, it costs for Otter.io, it costs for all these little things that we do to bring STLX for you. So we have a few different options: student membership, pro membership, and if you are a business, an annual business membership. And these do come with discounted merchant events and private member events and those sort of things as well. And if you are looking for us, here's where you can find us. My name is Al, and here's all the places you can find me at. And then we also have Holly, who usually would be here, but is not today. And so you can also find her as well. And if you're looking for just general STLX, these are all the different places that you can find us at. I'll give you a second if you want to screenshot that. Okay, and then other than that, you know, you guys can go back to, you know, your workday being now educated by the fabulous Shanae. So thank you for coming out, and I hope to see you at our next event. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.